Welcome to Uncomfortable, conversations about culture and Christianity. My name is Eric, and today I'm joined by Rachel.
Hey, y'all.
And Jess.
Merry Christmas, world.
Oh, and Alex.
You literally just stole mine. I was going to say Merry Christmas, not world. Getting to switch it up on me.
Well, we all have our Christmas sweaters on this time if you're not watching the video version. So,
very kind of you all.
Yes, we didn't set you up this week for failure, Alex. Yeah, I think this is going to be our uncomfortable Christmas special is what we're going to, I think I've just now decided I'm going to call it. We have a couple guests lined up for you, maybe even a little music, and, you know, our normal fun banter that you've come to expect. So later on in the episode, actually at the very end, we're going to do a little virtual gift exchange. And what that is earlier this week, we drew names and we had to go to Amazon and find a gift for this person that we would like to buy for them. We're not going to really buy it, but just something that, matches their personality. And at the end of this episode, make sure you stick around as we exchange those gifts and see the surprised look on everyone's faces. But before we get any further, we played a little game on our social media account at CCC Omaha on Instagram, a little this or that Christmas game. And I think, Alex, you got that queued up to go through. You're going to let us say our opinion on this, and then we'll also look at the results, correct?
Yep. So we'll go. I'll just do the order that you're on my screen because that's how you should probably be on everyone else. So it's going to go Jess, Rachel, Eric, and then I'll go and give you the actual result. Okay. But I already know the answers, but I'll give my honest how I voted. So here's the first question. Christmas cookies or candy canes? Jess, you're up.
Cookies.
I'm with cookies as well. And so is 91% one cookies there, ladies and
That's
gentlemen.
not even a good comparison, I feel like.
Hey, we're moving on.
That?
We don't have time to talk about that. Real
Candy
tree or
bad.
fake tree, Jess?
Oh, fake. I want to say real, but we have a fake tree, so fake.
I had a real tree one time and it was a nightmare. I hated cleaning it up. I hated getting sap all over everything. Never again. Fake tree always.
Fake tree as well. 66-34. Fake tree won.
Ooh,
all right. Here we go. White Christmas or no snow on Christmas?
White Christmas. Give me a blizzard. Yeah, white Christmas.
I honestly hate shoveling snow and walking in snow and driving in snow and being cold in general. So give me a brown Christmas. I don't care.
Brown Christmas. I'm going to go white Christmas along with 84% of our voters. All right. I have a feeling this one's going to go someplace, but this is hot chocolate or eggnog.
Hot chocolate. Eggnog.
Disgusting. Hot chocolate, not eggnog.
I'm in the minority on this one, and with the people that voted 19 to 81%, I'm all eggnog, but it was hot chocolate. All right, this is our closest one from the voters, at least. Christmas movies or Christmas music, Jess?
I'm gonna go movies because that's what I feel right now. I'm gonna go music.
Yeah, as long as it's not something annoying like Christmas shoes, I'm gonna go with music.
I'm gonna go with music as well, but the voters they said 53% movies to 47% Christmas music. They're wrong.
Wow. Is it cheating if I voted on those?
I know I voted on all of these too. So
okay.
So I'm giving my actual votes. All right, now we've got wrapping paper or gift bags. And I think this could be, I don't know if people are answering this based on how they'd like to receive their present or how they like to give it.
Wrap.
I have a different answer for both of those.
I'm going to go wrapping paper. Yeah, I'm saying wrapping paper, but I did all bags this year because that's just what I dead.
Yeah. I think the excitement of getting a wrapped present is much more fun to open than a bag. And for that reason, I'm going wrapping paper. But yes, if I'm giving the present, then you're probably getting a bag.
Yeah, me too. I vote for wrapping paper, and 82-18 on that one, wrapping paper. All right, we've got Secret Santa or White Elephant. Which kind of gift exchange would you rather be in?
White Elephant. I always get so angry at White Elephant, so I have to do Secret Santa.
Only because I'm lazy and I like the idea that I can just find something in my house to give you, I'm going to go with White Elephant.
I also voted White Elephant, but the people spoke 62% to 80, 62 to 38 for Secret Santa.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. We've got, this is pretty controversial. Actually, it was a landslide. Angel Tree Topper or the Star Tree Topper?
I put a bow this year.
That's not one of the options.
I guess I'm gonna go Angel, but I bet everybody said Star.
Oh man, ours is a star.
Yeah, I mean, Star.
We are Star people as well, 76 to 24. And here's the last question out there for Christmas lights. Okay, would you rather have white lights only, so just solid white lights, or multicolored lights? We didn't say if this was Christmas outdoors or indoors, but what is your vote?
White lights.
White, yeah, white lights.
It's an argument in our home, but I like white. My wife loves color lights on the tree and everything. I just like the plain, simple white light.
Also an argument in our home, and I am on team white lights as well as 65% of our voters. And so I think we all did pretty well. Most of us, I think eggnog's the only one that I was totally off base on. And then we had the Christmas music and Christmas movies, but most of those were landslides. So thanks everyone for voting. We had
that was fun.
I think almost 200 or 140 people vote on most of those. So thanks again.
Oh, wow.
That's exciting, and that's scientific when you have, over 2%.
We're going to be turning all that
It's
data.
not just the four of us that voted.
Thank you for voting, because we're going to turn all that data into advertisers so they know how to market to you.
Yes, we appreciate you. And that's what
That's
I have
not
for
true. That is not true. That is not true. All right. Merry Christmas, everyone, as we continue our merry way in this episode. But up next is headlines. All right, everybody. Our first and only headline of the week is the Christmas Bethlehem star is going to be visible on Monday. It is actually a rare conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn aligning, but some speculate this might have been the star that the wise men followed to Jesus, and it's also the star that most of us decided to put on our trees.
Yes, that exact star is on my tree.
Yes, I have a little Saturn and Jupiter.
I'm excited to see it. Didn't the article say it was the first time in a long time, right?
Yes, it's been a while.
I thought it was like early 1900s was the first time.
Let's
maybe.
See, the conjunction was visible from Earth when it was from 800 years ago.
Wow.
Oh,
I don't remember that.
Yes.
That's amazing. I'm excited to see it. I love those things that pop up and it's like, you haven't seen something like this for hundreds of years.
And it won't be back for another 100 of years. Yeah.
So I will go outside.
It's interesting,
even if it's at midnight and look.
It does say a similar conjunction will happen in March of 2080, but the two planets won't appear as close as they will on Monday until 2417. So none of us will be alive then. But yeah,
possibly 2080. I'm hoping for it.
Oh yeah, 2080, sure, but not 2417.
2080, that would be like I'd be almost hitting 100 though. Still, so.
Yeah. I got my fingers crossed for 2080. Alex and I are gonna be at the retirement center, wheeling our chairs out to look at the.
Yeah.
When we were doing the podcast, we talked about this.
We'll still be doing the podcast.
That's true.
in our retirement homes talking about this as our headline in 2080. So
Yep.
ready for it.
Remember this day.
We just won't have a platform or a recording. It'll just be all the other members of the retirement community gathered around to listen. Yeah, this stuff is really interesting, and I think it's a fun thing to do. If you don't have anything planned on a Monday night, have a little Bethlehem star party. Make yourself some hot cocoa or some eggnog, and go sit out on your porch and look at the star.
Perfect night to read the Christmas story.
Ooh,
Just set you up.
that is really good. Do we have a time on it? I feel like we're abandoning people here without all the information they need. I'm not seeing exactly what time.
I feel like I saw so many headlines. We've got obviously one, but there's like so many.
And there's like Facebook invites of going to see the Bethlehem star. But it's so cool how it's something that's tied back to Christianity and Jesus's birth. I feel like there's not very many things too often like nature, obviously, like we're reflecting, we can see Jesus and things, but just like the Bethlehem star. I mean, that's cool.
Pretty special.
Very special.
It's funny because my 9-year-old son has brought it up to me several times since he found out about it. And so if we miss it, I'm going to feel like a terrible parent. So the Went house is looking forward to checking out this star. So hopefully everybody gets a chance to view that. But that does it for our headlines this week. Up next, we have an interview with the one, the only Dr. KARL PAGENKEMPER. We ask him all our questions about Christmas, and hopefully he doesn't dash your dreams too much with, some of the hardcore facts of the Christmas story.
Dr. KARL PAGENKEMPER is joining us today. If you're watching this, you'll see a sweet ode to Grace University on my hat. That's where I first met Dr. PAGENKEMPER. He was the VP of Academic Affairs at Grace University. So like when I'm a kid that I don't sometimes still don't know how I graduated from college, not because of them, because of me. It's wild and fun to think that where life takes you, that we're even working together at Christ Community Church. What a gift he is. I know, Jess, you also a Grace alum.
Yes.
Got to be under the tutelage of the one only.
Dr. PAGENKEMPER taught me in my undergrad and in my graduate studies. Yeah.
Yeah. So here we are.
I've gotten many different levels.
The goal was not to hurt anybody.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Eric and Dr. PAGENKEMPER worked together at Grace. They have similar sweaters on today too, at least the same color. So
we planned that. You could say I had my tenure at Grace, right? I was there 10 years, so as a staff member.
Oh yeah, that works.
Wow, Eric.
But you got to understand where Eric worked. He worked in the morgue.
Yeah, that's true. I did work in the morgue.
But it was well redesigned, and Eric was a good guy to work with.
Yeah,
that means the basement.
Yeah, the basement.
Anyone wondering?
The Grace University was in an old hospital building and then it was converted to a university.
Wow.
And the basement where the marketing department was, where I worked, was formerly the morgue. There were only a few ghosts to hang out with.
All the stories.
The catacomb.
Few dead bodies. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's fun to have Dr. PAGENKEMPER on here today. I know we get to have you as a resource and message team, and our residents are a part of that, and so on and so forth. You get to lead them. So why don't you talk, maybe just introduce to us a little bit, Dr. PAGENKEMPER, what you do. What do you do at Christ Community? And then we've got some I think some challenging questions to ask around Christmas and some of that stuff. So tell us about you.
I obviously worked at Grace for several years. I think I was there 18 years. I was brought in as a Bible division chair, and eventually they shoved me into an academic office, which is a nice way of saying they wanted somebody to step forward and everybody else stepped back, and I was remaining. So they made me dean. And a couple of years ago, that school closed. That was I would say mild trauma, to say the least, for many.
Yeah.
But I was in the middle of a lot of the cleanup of that, to be truthful with you. And then about a year and a half ago, one of my grad students was Jim Ratty, who is our execs guy here. And for reasons that are still beyond me, he thought, oh, there's an opportunity. We need someone with this. And for some reason or other, I came into his head. And I've been grateful for that because, quite honestly, the timing was great. I had a forced sabbatic for about a year and desperately needed one. And then I came back to this, which is I got an office and I got people to work with. And I don't have 50, 70 people hanging off my responsible pen. I've just got some cool residents to work with. So my area of study is specifically my terminal work was in New Testament, Greek exegesis, literature, New Testament history, that kind of stuff. So that's where I did my, I've been at 2 different graduate schools for doctoral work and other seminaries. So I've been around the block at least once. And that's my area, specifically New Testament studies. That's why this time of year is always a pleasure for me, because I get a chance to think about some of the things that matter, both spiritually as well as academically.
And your books are real in your office. So I have got a fake background of books that I've never read. Yeah, and all of those are real.
I've got lots of them around here. Those are real live books that I keep around my desk. And I'd be happy to rotate it, but no, you don't want to see them.
Yeah,
I've got some in storage if you need something to put on your shelf.
I was just going to say, as a resident, when Karl came in, it was extremely helpful because residents not only are basically interns at the church, but we also are completing our master's degree at Crown College. And so to have someone who understood kind of the academic side of things at the church to help us was just like so helpful, because I think sometimes it can be hard to just have this kind of online college thing and not really have people at the church that understood, oh, well, let me help you with this, this class, or if you need to change classes or whatever. So yeah, Karl is a great help in that.
Yeah, if you're going to do a residency program, it really helps to have somebody on site who has some conception of how schools work. They are a bit of a mystery, and churches and institutions like schools often have bumps. And I don't mind being in the middle of that. That's fun because you get to work with great residents, really. And we got good people on top of us. So I'm in good shape.
Cool. So one of the reasons we had you on here is not just because of how handsome you are and how many books you've got in your office.
That's gotta be it.
But we're approaching Christmas, and so we've had some people, and I definitely as a pastor have had questions a lot. A lot of what we do in celebrating Christianity, it's just weird. We have really weird beliefs, but if you start with Jesus and the birth of Christ, we've got this whole immaculate conception thing going on where an angel shows up and tells Mary she's having a baby, but from God, and the Holy Spirit's the one that impregnates her. I mean, if I've told this story like in all its glory to my kids, they'd freak out probably. But they don't. Maybe they wouldn't. Maybe that's how they think their mom got pregnant. I don't really know. But that's another story.
Refer back to previous podcasts for that.
But I think, like you said, you've got a New Testament, that's where you're really specialized. And so I'd love to, if you had an elevator kind of conversation with somebody of how do you get me to start to buy into this wacky stuff that this baby was born in a manger and somehow this has something to do with my life, 2,000 years later, and there was a star, and how do I even begin to trust some of this stuff in a modern skeptical world?
You are entering a complete world of discussion because the first thing you probably have to do is make sure you get your data right. Even the idea of, you mentioned the Immaculate Conception is a theological construct that goes actually around Mary, not around Jesus. I mean, historically, this is a pretty wide open conversation of data and facts that are not well thought about. Was Jesus born, did some married couple come to an inn and say, I'm sorry, we don't have any room, like we typically see on stage productions? But chances are Bethlehem's a small town in the first century. It might have had little more than a shelter, which would look like a truck stop and a place where a bunch of people could sleep in relative, they're safe because of a group of people. Wow. Jesus may well have been born in a cave. So yes, I typically approach the historicity challenges very holistically, which is to say, there are a lot of issues we could engage, but for me, the most central will be, oddly enough, the certainty that somebody existed historically that was named Jesus, the certainty that he died, and the certainty that he actually got up. Yeah. Because nothing personal, I think resurrection from the dead is far more challenging than a lot of things that we see as typical miracles going on in the New Testament. That is one of the most amazing things in history. And so the other part of this is I can't assume that in the first century, they wouldn't have thought that a birth of a virgin situation was normal either. It's not like they'd been around for more than one generation. They knew how babies happened. They were in the room when it happened. And that meant that neighbors,
nice
when you gave
reference.
birth, thank you. When they gave birth in their homes, they knew the process. They knew it was bloody. They knew it was hard. I'm reasonably certain the birth of Jesus was not a silent night. Between the baby that is born and the birth process itself, it was that's a nice hymn, and there probably wasn't snow. There's probably wasn't much snow around. Nice quiet snowfall. It wasn't there. It doesn't that time, and probably in the springtime. To be honest with you. So I think sorry.
Me and Jesus don't actually share a birthday. Is that what you're saying?
Oh no!
Darn! I'm so sorry.
We're kicking this guy off.
It's kind of like being born on the 4th of July. All those fireworks are for you, and now all these gifts were for you. So I really find that what I want to find is in a historical record of some form, what are the things that I can verify, so that I think if I can verify I got a historical Jesus, and I know some of those things. We know from various 2nd century, 1st century, 2nd century authors that Jesus was known as a miracle worker. Some of them called him a sorcerer. We know that in the extra canonical literature. So we know there was things going on. The question we have ultimately is how much do we know and how accurately do we know it? And I have been inclined to grant that once we got by resurrection and once we realized the actual historical cataclysmic change that happened because of the resurrection historically, as a historian, that strikes me as a strong mark that what we saw was very real. So when we start asking questions about birth, things like that, those are relatively secondary issues to me. It doesn't mean I have known several people who have a deep faith in Christ who are not sure about the virgin birth, to be honest with you. In the beginning part of the last century, the 1900s, the virgin birth was one of what they called the fundamentals. These are pretty essential things. And I think some of those we've kind of understood is a conservative evangelical or a white believer in Jesus or a black believer in Jesus on solid ground as a believer still questioning things that we really have no way of historically verifying outside of. Look, virgin birth, Mary, the only people that knew that Mary was a virgin were like Mary, and Joseph knew he wasn't part of it.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, the early church, they would question that because all through Jesus's life, you've got people who are telling, and Jesus is telling them, the Pharisees, that your dad is not God, your dad is Satan. And they come along and say, well, we were not born of immorality or anything like that, which is a swipe at him because the rumors were out there.
Yeah.
I don't know that answers your question, but that's how I would typically get at it, is look at the broad stroke of truth behind it and then begin to observe, are these credible? They're hard sometimes, but are they consistent in the consistent testimony of the early church to it? I mean, why would they lie? So those are the kind of questions I might raise if someone's a question. Is it possible and is it absolutely required that a person believe in virgin birth? Well, theologically, truthfully, I think God could have made Jesus sinless without a virgin birth. But if you follow the history of the canon, how often unique births they were things that only an impossible doing God could do. So that's why it says to Mary, is anything impossible or too hard?
Yeah. So you've used a couple words just for, all of our listeners might not be as bright as you or educated like us Grace University folks. But so you talk about extra canonical, that I don't even know if I said that right.
Ooh.
And canon. Put that in layman's term. What are you talking about?
Sure. Great question. And it's the right question to ask. And I sometimes throw vocabulary because it's shorthand to get places. Extra canonical as opposed to canonical. We think of if we draw a circle around the canon, we think of these 66 books. Most of us,
the Bible,
okay,
as the canon of the Bible, the measure by which we look at the church and the belief system of Israel and the church. And we think of those 66 books. If we go beyond that, maybe we look at something like the Didache, which is a marvelous piece of work. Yeah, some people ought to read it, but because it didn't make it into the final canon, nobody reads it. So we have a little barrier there. When I say extra canonical, it could be Christian work. It could be Jewish work. The Jewish writings of the time are extensive. And Jesus gets mentioned a few times. Josephus is a historical period. A Jew at the time writes history around Israel at the very first century. Tacitus, Suetonius, those kinds of names are, we throw them around fairly readily, but in the guild, but those are historical people outside of the canon. So like Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and Paul, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's helpful. And I think, like you said, we could get into so many bunny trails right now with the canon and how that was put together, or the Bible for those of us that don't, use those kind of academic terms all the time, and how that's trustworthy. And then the eyewitnesses and the writings compared to other ancient antiquity and stuff like that. I think it'd be fascinating to have you on another time and help us understand that at a deeper level. But I think it's good to, for even to step back and hear some of that you've talked about.
In the academic guild, by the way, that's actually where in the last 15 years or so, that area of the nature and what kind of literature is gospel. And most recently, some of the best works are coming out by guys who are saying, these are historically, basically reliable on their face. And if God is behind them, we would have no reason to distrust them, because we know that early historians often, not always, but often wrote material that was designed to tell the truth. And if it wasn't, I hate to say, we don't know hardly nothing. Is a double negative for you. We really don't know much unless we assume, and apparently they did. When you look at comparative biographies and other writers of the first century, that's a whole field now of study that's been actually quite productive. I think we got good reason to think the New Testament Gospels are reliable as documents, even if they're not reliable in all their details. They're largely trustable as historical documents of the time. And those of us who happen to believe in Jesus often look at these texts and say, wow, they sing to us. We hear their words and it speaks to us. We say, this does sound like it's from God.
That's good. That's good. That's helpful. And like I said, the whole list of bunny trails where we could go on, but I think that's some of those conversations are so important, because I think even as like young parents, I don't know, maybe for you and Jess or Eric, like, as we wrestle with like the story of Christmas, there's so many things, especially in Western American culture, that it's cute. It's good for pageants, but that we maybe get wrong as we tell that story. But then as our kids also, you're hearing stories about like St. Nicholas and Santa Claus, and we're like confusing them by telling them these two different narratives. And then later in life, we're like, and if there's any kids or somebody listening that doesn't know Santa's not real, by the way, I don't.
Oh, you just said it.
So I do think that that's a difficult line to balance. Is like, okay, we've taught you all of this for so long, but part of it's fiction, and then even part of the truth that we're teaching you is kind of fiction and embellished and good for TV. And so I think for a lot of people, especially that growing up in the church, we can make skeptics out of them, because we start to tell them all these things and they start to learn, maybe every part of that, maybe Jesus wasn't white, or maybe Mary and Joseph traveled with more people, or these other questions start to come into our minds. And then it can make us want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And part of that's just how we present the Christmas story. So,
well, I would say that's actually what attracts me to it, because I'm a guy who likes to swim upstream sometimes. I like to take a contrarian view occasionally, and I'm not interested. I get the value of working with Santa Claus and Easter Bunny and things like that, especially with younger kids. But as we get older, we have to begin to lean into those things that we are more firmly grounded in. And I frankly think when a person trusts Christ and things change in their life, suddenly there's something real going on here. This isn't just about presents under a tree. I don't have to create a Santa Claus film of, with Steve Carell on how Santa shows up. I think we've got legitimate grounds to think of historical value of the narratives. They're complicated, and the longer you spend time in them, the more complicated they get. But that drives some of me. I like that stuff.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Well, I think that's helpful. I think unless anybody else has more questions, because like I said, we could literally sit around and talk about this.
I just do a whole episode on these types of questions. I would like to touch a little bit. You mentioned earlier about the birth happening probably in the spring, or obviously not December 25th. And it's an easy way for us to celebrate it, and it's we have this date, and then we exchange gifts, and we have all this kind of ritualistic habit that we go through every year. But a lot of that, if I understand the history of it correctly, it was kind of co-opted from other pagan holidays that they kind of piggybacked Jesus onto. They're kind of like, hey, well, yeah, sure, let's celebrate the solstice, but also Jesus. And so, and those holidays are kind of what morphed into what we celebrate as the modern Christmas. And in that, is that, I think surrounding all of this is when you're talking about Santa and the Easter Bunny, and then we also tack on all these other, kind of winter solstice holidays, things like that. And then you look at the facts behind these falsities, and then it doesn't make an argument for people to say, well, then, this Jesus argument is also tenable because what? How are you backing this up? And I think when you have those conversations, especially in a very more science culture that we live in, where they want facts above anything else, it makes it really hard to have these conversations with your kids and with those that you love that are not believers.
Yeah.
From a historical point of view, yes, Christianity in many ways is what they've done. They've done what a lot of religions do and a lot of historical elements do. They come into a world and they inhabit and they take over. Mm-hmm. So at the beginning of John, John is going to say, in the beginning was the Logos. John takes language from a Greek culture that when the Greeks hear it, they go, yeah, I know something about Logos. I'm not sure what I know about it, but I'm not a philosopher, but I got enough. Or he talks to a Jew who says, I've heard that phrase in the beginning before, and I think I remember that God spoke, because every Jew understands the opening of Genesis. And then what John does is he comes in, he packs his own information in it. So Christianity has a tendency to come in and inhabit a world that's already there. A very simple example that you won't know, which may seem a little more neutral. In the ancient world, you have a Greek pantheon, and one of the guys that's not known very well is a guy by the name of Asclepius. Now, that's a fancy name, but really Asclepius is sort of one of those demigods, kind of like Hercules, who's responsible for healing. Zeus isn't real happy with him. He zaps him because he actually resurrected someone from the dead. Zeus zaps him, he dies, and he enters the pantheon, and suddenly you have a whole religion. The details don't matter, but here's the deal. Asclepiaeons are common in the first century before Jesus, but by the 2nd century AD, an Asclepiaeon was like a hospital. The Christians go in and literally essentially undo them, because Christians, in fact, they not only practice healing, but they're not afraid of the sick. So you could go to an Asclepiaeon, but if I've got a bunch of sick people in there, and frankly, they're not going to get better, I put them out because I don't want the reputation. Christians weren't afraid of that. They literally took over Asclepiaeons. Most of us don't even know they exist anymore, but they became hospitals on behalf of Christian ministries because they cared for the sick and dying. So they literally inhabit a pattern of life and take it over and influence it. Same kind of stuff goes on through much of history. The fact that we've got Santa Claus today as a sort of taking over Christmas is much more of a testimony to the subsequent years, how we tend to step on one another all the time in culture. Easter has a bunny, but quite honestly, for many of us, Easter and Pentecost are two of the most important holidays of our year, on our calendar year. Christmas obviously has become pretty commercial.
Yeah.
Well, that may be more information than you want to know.
No, I think that's good. It's less information than I want to know. Probably, I just want to keep going, but we got to wrap this up.
Understood.
Yeah. No, does anyone else have any other questions before we, put a bow on it, to say quite literally?
Will you come back sometime? I think that's a question.
Yeah. That's the question. Can we get you for a full episode sometime?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
We'll work with your manager. We'll talk to him.
We'll negotiate off screen before I look for how much is this going to cost me or cost you, whichever works. I'd be happy.
We're really looking forward to having our first 3-hour episode ever. That's kind of
oh man, and I was slammed storm doors quite like that.
Okay, we need to go.
I'm just jesting a little bit. All right. Well, thank you, Karl, for all your insight and your knowledge. Yeah. It's one of those things that I think, I know for me personally, I have a very, I need the facts type of brain. That's the way I work. I don't like just to be told something. I like to learn it for myself. And so I think these sorts of groundings that you provide are very helpful to me in this time of the year, even just talking to my kids who have questions. But also at a greater level, I think it's just valuable as Christians being the light to the world. And it's a very skeptical world right now, that we can't just come out there with our fun, fluffy stories always. It's good to have this grounded, rooted theology that gives us the strength to actually have intellectual conversations with the lost. And so really value that. I think it's important.
Fair enough.
But thanks a lot, Karl. We really appreciate your time.
Very good.
Special thanks to Karl for breaking all of this Christmas story down for us and all these other facts that I just love to gobble up. And I could have just listened to him talk for another couple hours about all this, but we really appreciate that. And we hope that it was something that you all appreciated. I know this next thing we have is something that everyone will appreciate. It's a little Christmas music. We asked Joshua Lillie, Minister Mark's executive assistant, a man of many talents, to put together a Christmas song for us to enjoy this year about the podcast, an uncomfortable Christmas carol even. So without any further ado, let's continue our Christmas special with this song.
It's an uncomfortable Christmas, from Council Bluffs to West O, and it's too cold for swimming or Huskers for winning when everything's covered in snow. Well now, Eric has opinions and asks tough questions to boot, but to play devil's advocate won't get past Alex, and everyone gets Jesus duped. On this uncomfortable Christmas, you might really miss Arkansas, and you might get excited or choose to stay quiet when your favorite phrase is, "Hey y'all." Well, Jess always gets the giggles, worked at Shopco and does CrossFit too. You might grow or be challenged when a licensed counselor clean and jerks more weight than you. We have Eric the host, but like Alex the most, except when he acts like he's 12. Jess will stay level-headed when south things are headed, and Rachel just really likes shelves. If you're curious about culture and think Christianity's weird, well then put on your headphones and ready yourself for an uncomfortable Christmas. It's an uncomfortable uncomfortable Christmas. Have an uncomfortable Christmas this year.
Oh,
Bravo.
wow. Round of
That was so
applause.
good.
Josh, thank you.
Amazing man of many talents.
Oh, you brought it. That will be a cherished Christmas song that I will play around my house every year.
That guy's an avid listener. He knew a lot about it. So
That's amazing.
All the tropes, he found them all. All right. Up next, we have an interview with Ian Wilsey, all the way from New Jersey, just to talk about what a year 2020 has been and to look a little bit forward into 2021. Ian, welcome to the Uncomfortable podcast. We like to say that in some ways this is possible because it's kind of your brainchild when you were a resident at Christ Community Church early on. You were the first class, right? First class of the residency program. And you brought up a podcast a few times, and I think we started getting serious about it right when you were on your way out the door at the end of your residency. And I mean, I'm just going to give a little bit of background so people, if they don't know who you are and why you're here, you finished the residency at CCC and then you moved on to New Jersey where you're at Princeton Alliance Church. And I'll let you explain a little bit about what you do there and then we'll go from there.
New Jersey.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had you.
Thanks, Eric. Well, you got a little bit of a rundown, but was in the first class and then came out here in 2019 and have been kind of getting the communications type of things going and kind of in place and developing structure around how to approach communications at the church here. And so working with a small team building, working on skill sets and just like systems and communicating something really precious and really important and doing it well. And I mean, it's changed a lot since when I started to where we are now.
I was going to say, they're probably really glad that they hired you right before 2020.
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, the affirmations in different forms, and that's been one of the biggest ones, right? So, I mean, no joke. I was talking to people, 2018, 2019 about trying to find a place that was looking for someone that kind of was interested in what I was. And I was getting some weird looks, to be honest. And then, but like you said, I mean, it's getting to this point and it's like, wow, like it's been a year and a half or so. And getting to look back at like, that wasn't what I was expecting, but it was definitely like the right thing. And have yet to hear anyone kind of use the Jersey accent, as Alex would say. Yeah. So, I mean, just as someone who grew up in the Midwest, I can confirm it's not quite like that. There's, maybe if you're from North Jersey, you might have that. If you're from South Jersey, it's very different. And then you got me, who is technically in Central. Some people would argue that doesn't exist, but yeah.
You're just really ruining Alex's perspective of Jersey now.
Hey, I'm just here to help my fellow Midwesterners out and knowing that it's not quite the way it looks sometimes. I think New Jersey gets a bad rap. I heard somewhere that New Jersey is like the most hated state in the country. And I'm like, you've never been to Iowa, so that's...
Ouch, that hurts a lot, Ian. At least not everyone here works in sanitation, okay?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, and there's people that don't even know Nebraska is a state out there. And so that, I mean, it's probably at least nice to be noticed. So Rachel and Ian, you guys were both part of that first, the inaugural residency class. Do you guys have any special stories, as part of the residency class you want to share about one another?
Oh, well, I was part of the second one. So Ian and I were actually in different cohorts.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we didn't interact as much as we could have. So just a year.
Yeah, sorry, Alex.
I failed there.
That was a terrible question. I can't know.
Where do we go from here? Yeah. So Ian, what's it been like? I mean, I know for you, and I'd love to hear this because you've obviously been a voicemailer on the podcast before, and we've appreciated your voice, and like just a friend of like Eric and I, and have been living in this world. So obviously we text and all that kind of stuff a lot. But what's it been like moving from Nebraska to New Jersey? Not even just culturally, we talked about that a little bit, but what's it been like in the middle of a pandemic? Like you have moved, like you said, you're from the Midwest, Minnesota, right? And then you've moved like as a single guy. We had a whole conversation about singleness a few podcasts ago, obviously with our residents, but to like try to learn how to connect into community, and like part of that's your job as a communications like guy. But to do that in the middle of a pandemic where you've got to spend so much of your time, and especially in New Jersey, even probably more so with the restrictions and so on and so forth than we're even used to in Nebraska. What's like that been like just for you, like emotionally, spiritually? I'm just curious, like share.
Yeah.
Probably a lot
I'm
there.
actively working through that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically I think, if there was like a D-Day type of thing, it would have been, there was a weekend in March where, just keep this in mind. It was like, first the idea was, we've got a live stream. And that was just a new thing for us. I mean, I know CCC's been doing that for a while, right? But we had to start live streaming, and hey, no one can be here, and then as in the church. And then I think it was, I want to say the Saturday before Sunday that following week, where I was like, hey, listen,
Saturday is before Sunday.
Like
I can confirm that.
You can't, like, we had to basically drop everything and totally redo what church service was going to be and go fully online. No one could really even be at church, and it was like, all right, and so there's, called to the front lines to, get things happening. And like, it's largely stuff that people might not have noticed, and so that was kind of the thing. I was like, just for example, to my experience, even being on the podcast, listeners will not necessarily know all that goes into this. I think each of you could attest to it, that there's a lot more that goes into the beginning, and like, even like the hardware that's involved in it, and just the weird, like, quirky audio things, or like someone's video doesn't quite look right, if you're on YouTube or wherever. Like, there's just so many different things that, like, gosh, I take it for granted too when it's not me, right? And so I think that's probably best summarized as being like a common theme, not even necessarily underappreciated, but just simply showing that there's just largely ignorance around like what goes into, like streaming even, like I know Eric and the communication team are involved with that a lot, right? And then you get into the conversation, and I think this has kind of been what is both exciting and really like pretty like intimidating, is like thinking about, okay, what's next, or where are we going from here? How can we keep things progressing and not, I think there was a moment where we were very much in like survival mode, just trying to say like, all right, like, next month, are we, like, oh, by Easter we'll be fine, like those types of things. And I was like, no, this is like long haul. Like, how do we really lean into this and make the most out of it? And keep in mind, I was still pretty new even at that point, right? So not only was I still trying to learn things, like this is a new position for me. Residency showed me a lot. CCC is still not the same as PAC, right? So, and it's funny, it's all 3 syllables. You can, but yeah, I think in broad strokes, that's really it, but I think there's been weird feelings of like, I think Eric might have touched on this before at some point, but where it's like all of a sudden you feel like maybe people start to like will care about kind of what we're doing, or like now it's important,
Yeah.
And there's probably an element of truth to that, and a lot of just kind of like working out of wounding and like just what life does to you, and the lies you tell yourself. But there was some of that. There's also, again, we talked about the affirmation type stuff where it was like that really lit my fire for a lot of the time, through this year. I mean, when we're recording this, it's at the end of 2020. And I mean, it's going to be just a time capsule itself. I mean, someone could listen through the podcast this year and be like, wow, what happened?
Yeah.
And like I said, there's still a lot that I'm actively processing, and life still happens to us, right? So it's like not only is our work, our vocation kind of shifting and changing, or maybe for somebody you don't have it anymore, but like then personal life still happens, right? Just you've talked about it. I'm a single guy. I was stuck in my apartment for 3 months at a time, right? And like, there's just these weird things. And then I'm brand new to the area. Cultural elements of like, it's already not even common to like invite someone over to your place in this area until you really know them. Just kind of the oniony type of culture where there's layers to people. For my Shrek fans out there you go. To sneak in a few. But yeah, I think those are things on my mind. As we're recording this, we're in Christmas mode. So it's again like, okay, we know what we would maybe like quote unquote normally do, but what is Christmas this year? And how can we like really lean into this and embrace it, but also understand like, gosh, like our staff is worn out. I'm going to take a venture and guess that CCC is like, people are just stretched really thin right now in a lot of ways, and again, personal life is a real thing too, that people are dealing with. The virus doesn't choose favorites, right? It can go to whoever, wherever, right? So there's just a lot of hurdles that we're running through. People connected to our congregation have passed this year because of the virus. And so there's so many things that, I mean, it's been on my mind a lot lately, especially. So.
Ian, are you the only communications person at that church?
If you're talking about job title, yeah. But basically our team is just structured a little bit differently maybe than some might be familiar with. I mean, we have some that are split time between benevolence ministry, like meeting needs of others in our community. That has been, I mean, talk about timely, right? Like that's been such a big thing this year, especially. And our people are known and our church is known in the area because of that specifically, which is just such a big pride thing for us that we're just like, we love that people know us for that,
That's awesome.
And because there's a reason for that, and it drives people to ask questions. So there is 3 others that are involved with what we're doing. And then definitely, I mean, very volunteer focused, and I mean, caring for the person and leading the person, not just as a means to an end and like making things happen when need be, even though that there's been times, especially lately too, where it's like, this person's sick. Hey, I need you to help me with something,
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how we're set up. It sort of creates this all hands on deck type feel, but there's also like just one very practical thing. And I don't think people would care if I shared this, but like our team, you know, like we actually hired during the pandemic, like the height of the pandemic, we hired someone, and our skill sets, our training, and our specialties are kind of all over the place. How do you train some of this stuff remotely? You know, and that's something we're still actively working through. Sorry, my earbud keeps. Okay. So yeah, that's, you know, when it comes to very practical things, I mean, it's like maybe for your show, trying to figure out whatever, again, the audio stuff that always goes weird and finicky. Like, how do you do it over a camera? You know, it's just sometimes it's a little cumbersome, you know?
Yeah. You know, I'd love to know, as we look at, and just more personally, like as we look at 2020, so 2 questions. As we look at 2020, what, like personally, have you learned? Like what's God taught you? I know you said you're probably processing that a little bit, but what are like lessons that you're like, man, this has been a crazy, crappy year, but I've learned this, or God's, you know, taught me this, or I've been you know, this is resonating with me. And then looking forward to 2021, like what do you have the most hope for as we move into the future? This is our last like podcast that we're doing of the 2020 year. So I think it'd just be fun to like hear from your own perspective of what. So looking back, how have you seen God faithful? What's he taught you? And then what are you excited for moving in the future?
It's hard to neglect the fact that there's a serious sense of affirmation to where like people would go out of their way to remind me that, because I can tell you, I haven't always felt that way. Not necessarily because like I didn't feel like I fit in for some reason, but just even in general, where it was like, I don't know, like, there have been times in my life where I'm asking myself, I don't know if, you know, people really understand what I'm doing, but I can tell you, like, they understand and they see the purpose more so than they may have in the past. So that's one very basic thing, but also kind of very personal to me, you know? And then it's hard to neglect also the lessons and reminders about rest. I mean, that was, I'm not the first person to bring that up, you know, but I mean, for those of you out there that have heard of that book from John Mark Comer about rest, or just simply having things taken away from you, I mean, there's so many chances now to where it's like, all right, where am I finding my hope and my satisfaction in life? I think it was a few different places actually, and it wasn't really where it should have been. And so it caused me to pause and to consider what my Sabbath routine was like, and to guard time better, and to know how to disconnect. I say all those things, and it's also like I'm not the best at it either, and so I'm not claiming that. But it's just it's hard to avoid that reality, and how like just simply daily routine and how you structure your day, especially when it comes to your just alone time spiritually. And I say alone time, I'm always alone. So,
Yeah.
But
we
like
all laugh. Yeah.
See, I mean, 2020 though, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
How do you start your day in the morning? I can tell you there have definitely been times. I don't know if it's just the time of year or what, but I'll wake up and it's like, I know what I need to get done today. It's like, wow, that's a rough way to wake up and to start your day, you know, versus like, you know, at church here, we're working through the Bible in a year together. And so, there have been so many moments when I'm kind of in that feeling where I'm just kind of focused on the productivity and the stress and the you know, a lot of good things, but it's like whatever the scripture was that day, that's exactly what I needed to hear, and it just met some sort of soul longing. Just even a simple reminder of who I am and who God is, and how he doesn't change, even though the world is totally in flux. And it just seems like, you know, we were talking about like 2020, it would be such a different, the uncomfortable podcast in 2020 was so different from 2019 in a lot of ways. And it's like, I'm thankful that God doesn't change, because I don't know what I would do at that point. Right. And like, there's so many different questions you could ask if that was the case. And I think there just been so many times, even alone, in these really sweet moments of worship, that I'm reminded of his presence and of how like something about it felt familiar. Right. And something about it felt like that same love that I knew from whenever. Right. And so I think that's been the thing kind of holding me steady. And talking on the phone more than I have in a long time. And yeah, I think that's kind of my answer to that. Now you were asking about 2021 as well. That is my understanding, correct?
Yeah. What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to a vaccine. That's just been kind of something that has really been encouraging for me recently, about like lots of, shared conclusion on its efficacy, and the fact that, like, I have grandparents that are in assisted living, and they have been living through, I can't imagine at the end of your life how many years they have left, that's the situation that they're in. Where they've been able to see my dad through like a window, right? Just stupid things like that. And they have a chance at actually having more of a normal life pretty soon, hopefully. So that's one thing. I think of like, I'm looking at Christmas, I can't go home to my parents. So I'm ready for a vaccine that'll let me do that and not feel like, as, fearful, but also like it's more so out of a love for them that I don't want to, right? And so it's kind of where my heart's at. And I have, I've been out here for 1.5 years, but there's still so much of this area in general that I haven't seen. And so just to be able to travel around would be something that would be fun. Weird things like, taking vacation right now in my world means being in my apartment.
Yeah.
We're about to see like a foot of snow too. So it's like even more so, but, 2021. I think in general, I'm anticipating some sort of sense of like normalcy in whatever form that means now, but, I'm not going to be saying that I'm naive enough to think that, 2020 is done. Whew, let's flip the calendar, because it is going to be very different. It's not. There's still a lot of hurting people out there. I don't know where to begin. You think of the racial injustice, you think of the just economic situations of hundreds of thousands of people, possibly with the housing crisis that is just like bubbling over, and like eventually something's got to give. Like, where does that go from here? It just seems like a road to nowhere kind of, like there's so many real pains. People are going to be losing their jobs still. Like, it's tough for me to say, 2021 is going to be this like grand chapter. I hope it is. And I think it really can be. And again, God doesn't change.
Yeah.
So I know we have that, but it's like, pain is still real in 2021 as it is in 2020. 2020 is just one that might be more, found in more history books. That's probably how it's going to shape out.
Yeah. Were you about to ask something, Jess?
I just want to say, Ian, I'm so glad we had you on today, because you just have highlighted so well what I think a lot of us have been thinking about and talking about, even, through this pandemic. But you have experienced so many different layers of, what we've heard about, or maybe we've done headlines on, of you moved and you have you got a new job and you're adjusting through this pandemic. And it's like, you are even highlighting people that aren't seen or heard. And so thank you for that. And again, like, I'm just remembering the people that maybe we're not thinking about that are just really working hard to do things that a lot of times go unseen. And so I think one like last question I'd ask is, I want to know, well, first of all, I want to know your favorite podcast from like our time has been, but more, if maybe we know somebody that's where you're at, where it's like, you're in a new place, you're isolated and you don't see a lot of people. What is something that you wish that like people would do for you or to remember you, or like what's something that's really meant a lot to you this year that maybe somebody else can do?
Wow. So I'll start with favorite podcast.
Now, Jess, you're asking him for.
I want to know, like, I guess
podcast.
Maybe since I've been on.
Plug
Yeah.
us.
Okay.
Please
Okay.
plug us.
This was a positive.
Since you've been on,
This was a positive thing for 2020. I don't know.
Hello,
I was
world.
thinking, hello, world. Hello, Ian.
I would say the one on, I don't know if it was only this, but I know the one that focused on conspiracies really struck a chord with me, just knowing conversations I've had with my family and just hard to, I don't know, it's, I think Eric's talked about it recently, even about just how that's been a big change this year. And it's been something I've been grieving in some ways. And then I think I remember in the past, I don't remember what, it's probably early on, but the whole like, you know, choose a favorite of whatever, like, I think it was Chili's and Applebee's was a question.
What team are you on?
I must, Chili's.
Okay, thank you.
It's not even close. I just think like some of that stuff, I'm just a sucker for it, you know? But I tell you what, though, with the podcast, like I am, you know, I've got my coffee or my diet soda, you know, and I'm joining in, and it is like a weekly routine for me because these are people that I really enjoy, and I feel like I'm at the table. And yeah, there's that connection too, where it's like it's something that I thought of, and it's actually coming to fruition, and it's fun to see. Like, especially, gosh, I just want to point this out. Could you imagine not having this podcast this year?
Yeah.
I mean, that was something that crossed my mind recently, and I'm thinking like, oh my goodness, like Alex talked about affirmation, you know, like goodness. And there's so many things that CCC has been doing so well for so long that really set the church there up really well to handle what 2020 brought. And so I've been really thankful for that. I mean, we just passed Thanksgiving, so I'll say that was my Thanksgiving thing. In terms of how someone, because your second question was how can, you know, someone living alone, how can you help kind of meet some of their spiritual, emotional needs, probably, right? And social needs. And I'd say one thing I've really enjoyed is when someone will like leave something at my door, like some sort of little gift or something that just shows that someone thought of you, and it's, you know, like maybe stuff to enjoy a movie well, or, you know, like one time I had someone ask me what I wanted off of like Uber Eats, you know, like stuff like that.
Those are good.
Food is a big thing for me, so I mean that's it's gonna work out well.
Awesome.
If you have any food, I mean, I probably won't turn it away. You know, if you want to know how to deliver something to me, just let me know. You can find my email on our website.
Or just send an email to podcast@cccomaha.org.
Send us your Amazon list.
I'm not like against it, right? You know, yeah.
We'll make sure all of that gets to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome.
That's a pretty simple thing.
Good.
I know another thing though is just when people will ask me, how's your family doing? And I'm like, oh, wow. Like, you care to know, you know, like that's meant something to me. But yeah.
Wow.
Well, Ian, thank you for hanging out with us. And
Yeah, thanks.
giving us some of your time. Hopefully we were able to fill your apartment with a little camaraderie for a few moments today in this lonely, isolated time.
This is great.
It's cool to hear your experience. I kind of echo what Jess is saying too. It's just, I think that whether people are married or they're cohabitating in some way or another, they live with their immediate families. This time has maybe not been as difficult from an isolation standpoint. And so, it's harder to relate to someone who is like completely isolated. And as you mentioned, days on end, just, staring at your ceiling. So it's a good reminder. I think people take that for granted if they aren't alone. So I think that's really good.
I mean, one thing I thought of as we're recording is like, I'm in an apartment building. Everyone's at home. I was like, I hope it's not too loud, because it usually is. And that's been one of the simple things about being stuck at home, that I'm like, I'm ready for this to be done. So I'm glad it worked out.
Yes.
But thanks again for being here. We really, really appreciate it. I hope whatever you find to do for your holiday celebration this year brings you some joy, and, keep in touch. And I'm sure we'll be talking to you some more. Thank you,
Christian.
Yeah, well, thanks, guys.
Bye, Ian.
Decorations of red.
Thank you, Ian. It's so good to see you, my dear friend. It's been a while. I'm looking forward to when we can see each other face to face. And thanks for kind of grounding us in the reality of, what's actually happening in our world. It's good to hear that stuff. All right. Well, we're getting to the point in this episode where we're going to end it. This is the last episode of 2020. But before we leave, we wanted to do a little virtual gift exchange. So I'll start. I drew Rachel's name. Rachel, I picked you this gift. I hope you're excited.
I am excited. All right. I'm going to look at it.
Okay. Open it up. Open your gift.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's a hanging shelf for plants.
Oh, that'd be nice.
It's got it's like hanging on a rope. There's 2 shelves. It's exactly my style. I don't even know how you knew my style like that. I'm looking forward to seeing your Instagram stories of you putting this shelf up and putting things on the shelf. Each decoration, yes. I'll post it on Instagram.
So many ways you can hang it over your bathtub. I mean, this is a versatile shelf.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Eric. It was such a good
with the almost 5-star review to boot.
All right, Rachel, you got Jess, so I'll let Jess.
I did. I wish I really could have bought this for you, Jess. I'm that excited about it.
The WOD book. Workout for CrossFitters.
Yes, please help us understand that.
What is the WOD?
What the WOD book is.
WOD means workout of the day. So when a lot of times, like in CrossFitting, you do like different movements or like different workouts multiple times to like check your progress. So this looks like a book where I can record all these workouts, track 200 of them, plus all the benchmarks. Yeah.
It's got the girls in there. It's got the
so your 1 rep max, you can make sure you keep track of that.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is amazing.
That's good.
I might need this anyways.
All right, Jess, you drew Alex's name.
Okay.
So
Alex, I drew you when I didn't realize that there was I didn't know if there was a limit on how much we could spend.
Well, I'm gonna click it. I'm gonna look.
Okay, click.
Here it comes. Oh wow! I've got a Kobe Bryant signed final Lakers ticket. So this is the last game of Kobe's career.
Yes, he signed it. Mamba out.
Mamba out. This.
And how much did this cost you?
$124,998.75. But the shipping is free.
Okay, Alex, I got this for you for a couple different reasons. First of all, you love basketball. True. I remember the Kobe episode from this year. And I thought if you ever got tired of it, you could sell this and pay off your house or something else. So this could really secure your future. I was thinking, upgrade that pool.
Yeah.
Buy a few more,
That is exciting. definitely didn't know they sold that on Amazon. So
I didn't either. I went deep into Amazon and found that.
That's good. That's good. Well, I got a gift for Eric, and Eric, I hope you enjoy this gift. I think
I am looking at it now, and it is a Desire. It's a Kanye West flannel fleece blanket, super soft, cozy, warm, and it appears to have all of the album covers and one large blanket that I will cherish for the rest of my life. I like that it even managed to get Jesus is King on there, so it must be a fairly recent blanket. It's beautiful.
But it doesn't have Kanye 2020 on there anywhere, so that's unfortunate.
I do want you to know I didn't. There's three size options. I purchased you the largest of all.
Okay, good.
80 by 60.
He didn't.
You can put that over your bed. Actually, I think it'll fit over a king size bed. So.
Okay, good.
That's
I'm
amazing.
Looking forward to snuggling up to that.
Great gifts,
with
guys.
Some cocoa. Yes, all of you, we picked the greatest gifts, and it's been a great year on this podcast, and I couldn't imagine doing it with anyone else. This has been a lot of fun this year. 2020 is going to go in the books as just one of the craziest years, and we got to live it. I remember telling my kids early on in the beginning of a pandemic, I was like, this hasn't happened since 1918, you guys. Like, you're going to be part of something that you're going to be able to talk about for the rest of your life. And this is a unique experience you get to live through, and hopefully everyone gets to live through. I mean, I know a lot of people haven't, so I shouldn't take that for granted, but it's something really special. And I hope everyone it's helped cope a little bit this year, listening to our podcast. I know we're doing what we can. And my dog's barking, by the way. So
your dog, he's retweeting that.
Mm-hmm.
Good way to sum up 2020.
Yeah, because you're doing it all from home. So, thanks, guys. I think that does it. Anyone else have any closing words before I send us off?
I'm excited for what's to come in 2021.
See you guys next year. Isn't that the fun?
Yes.
Good one, Alex.
Sorry, Rachel, I cut you off, but you said it.
I just said Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. We'll see y'all in 2021. It's been great. If you have any questions or concerns, you can always reach out to us on social media at CCC Omaha, or send us an email to podcast@cccomaha.com. We'd love to hear from you, and we can't wait till we get to gather and do another episode, the first episode of 2021. We'll talk to you all then.
Keep it Christian.
It's an uncomfortable Christmas from Council Bluffs to West O. And it's too cold for swimming or Huskers for winning when everything's covered in snow. Well, now, Eric has opinions.